And welcome to Mary Walter Radio. How are you? Oh, my camera's up a little high there, isn't it? Let me just put that down just a little tiny bit there. My husband was sitting in this chair and he's taller than I. How's that? That better? A little bit better, right? Welcome to the podcast. Really appreciate you joining me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You can do that on YouTube. Look for Mary Walter Radio if you have not done so. And I think I just want to look. Oh, I don't have YouTube up. We do. I'll bring it up, but we have some new subscribers that I want to thank for subscribing. Thank you. Please like the podcast, like the videos. You can go through the channel. You can see past guests who have joined us. We appreciate you doing that. And of course, the audio is available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Now, one of those guests who have joined us in the past, who I used to actually co-host with every now and then on my old radio station back in Washington, D.C., it is Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. How are
Mary.
you, my friend?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. I haven't seen you in a long time.
It's been a while. Yeah.
It has.
Time's flying. Yeah.
I know. Well, I was super happy that you were able to do this with us tonight because, like I said, I haven't talked to you in a long time. So I'm glad you were available. I've noticed I've moved on to sweatshirts. It suddenly got cold. It was 82 degrees here on Saturday, and we were at the beach. And now I'm freezing and wish my husband would turn the heat on.
It was 85 here yesterday, and it's now 53, I think, right now, last time I checked. So it's dropping here, too.
Are you in Florida now?
No, North Carolina.
North Carolina. I knew you went further south. So You're like in the halfback. Everybody calls North Carolina is like the halfback because you can still get home. You know, it's a day trip if you want to go visit like the family somewhere and then come back. So
pretty much. It's 4 hours from here to DC from where I'm at. So
yeah. So perfect.
Yeah.
Don't forget, Tony, I just want to introduce you properly. Our audience knows you from being on the show before, from being with us. But you are also the president of Project Sentinel. They also have a YouTube channel as well, and also the London Center for Policy Research. So keeping yourself super busy and hopefully out of trouble since the last time.
Never out of trouble, but I am busy.
Pete, trucking to Mary Walter Radio Live, yay! And MWRK Mary Walter, and also Pete and Bill have a podcast channel as well here on YouTube. So please check them out. I'll link them. I've linked them every now and then. I'll link them again to this podcast. Porch View Farm, Halloween, hello. Chris Christie says, "Hey Tony Shaffer, now I get to see if the voice matches his face."
That's a tough one. I mean, how do you do that? Is that like you cut someone out? You have like a cookie cutter or something? I mean, how do you do that? I don't get that.
Well, because I think everyone has a preconceived notion. Because I remember, when I was a kid, I always wondered what Howard Stern looked like. Right?
Yeah.
Like you didn't know because there was no internet because I'm that old. They had a chisel in his face. They had a chisel in his face on a stone tablet, right? In order to see what Howard Stern looked like. So, once the internet came along, everybody knew what the radio voices looked like, right? Because we were all there. So much for that face for radio. Now suddenly it counts. He says, "Nice Warren Zevon shirt."
That's
bro.
right.
Back
in 2002, this day, I think 2002 was the last live performance by Warren on David Letterman's show. He had the entire show to himself, and he sang his last sets before he passed. And his famous comment on life was uttered there: "Enjoy every sandwich," which I endorse. It's a great idea. So,
especially the PB&J with strawberry jelly.
That's right.
Mr. Spooky upon Halloween.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm missing Halloween downtown. They have a downtown thing. I'm here with you instead of getting candy. So I guess it's good for my waistline and good.
Yes. Steven is with Now Tax USA. He was on last Tuesday's podcast with James. I was on a staycation. So I was not part of it. I popped in every now and then, but great. If you missed it and you want to know about different tax alternatives other than the current scheme we have where you're taxed at every turn, Steve and James had a phenomenal conversation. You can also check out nowtaxusa.com and you can read all about their idea. It's very interesting and I like it. He says snow flurries called on the mountaintops of West Virginia. I saw that. They also got snow in Minneapolis and St. Paul, the Twin Cities. Second time they've had snow on Halloween. See, we don't. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and Governor Christie has snow flurries on the top of his belly, but that's a different story.
I think that's donut dust.
Oh, that's probably true.
It's
Too many of
probably
those.
true.
That's right, powder sugar donuts. It does the same thing.
Yeah,
Very similar.
yeah. So our little town here, and then we're going to get into this, but our little town has a parade at the school goes to from kindergarten to 8th grade. There's one classroom for each grade, no cafeteria, so the kids go home for lunch or eat at their desk or whatever. And because I live in Mayberry, and they have a parade at noon, and then the kids are allowed to trick or treat for the rest of the day. And but we had a problem with high tide today. So they had to change everything and get the kids out of school at 10 a.m. because of the high tide.
Wow.
And because otherwise it would have ruined the parade. They wouldn't have been able to parade. So what happens when you live at the Jersey Shore and you have a full moon and a lot of rain and the ground's super saturated and you get a high tide? That's what happens.
We have no tide here. We live on the Albemarle Sound, the Inner Banks, and it's all river, and it never rises. Even during storm surges, I think it goes up like 6 or 7 inches. We don't have that problem, thank goodness.
Well, this is the river that does this. So it's the river that floods. It was a great program last week. Yeah, they did a great job. So I've lived in this house for 24 years. We have never had a trick-or-treater ever, because there is a section inland, because I live on a peninsula, more inland, where it's one long street that's a dead end, and it's long, and then they have a couple little streets going off the side, and the houses are close together. So this tradition started, I mean, since we've lived here, that everybody who live on the street, they bring a table to the end of the driveway, and they have the candy. So that the kids just go from table to table to table. So they don't have, and the driveways aren't very long, but they don't have to go up to each house and ring the doorbell. And then people started and there's like an island in the middle. And so people put out like treats for dogs, and they have dog watering stations, and then it got into adult beverage trick-or-treating. So then people would have adult beverages next to the tables for the kids. So it becomes this huge block party. So of course, nobody's going to come to my part of town where like the people to both sides of us are summer only. The people at the corner are summer only, and the driveways are longer. We have hedges between our properties. So the kids are smart. They're going to go where they get the most bang for their buck, right? They're going to go where they can just go boom, boom, boom. They're smart. And the parents are smart because they want to go to the street that has adult beverages, and people bring out popcorn machines that they have on the street, and making cotton candy and all this stuff, and they just do it on their own. But word gets around. So we had people from neighboring towns who would come, bring their kids, and then just trick or treat there. People on that street will give out, I kid you not, each house will go through 1,000 pieces of candy.
Wow.
So, and they would ask you to donate candy because they have so many kids come. So this year, the cops changed it because that's also affected by tidal flooding there. So the far end of the street will go under. So no street parking like within any of the areas around there, so that people can't come in from other towns and park easily. But there are cars that will come in and drop their kids off to trick or treat and come back and pick them up in a couple of hours.
They could do it in a couple of days, and they'd be even better off. They could like go and do it like a nature adventure. They could like live in the woods a couple of days off the candy, make it into a real adventure.
Yeah, but what's going to happen eventually is it's going to get ruined because by people who come from out of town too, and it's going to get ruined. Some kid's going to get hurt in the street or something, and that's going to be the end of it.
It'll be like Cousin Eddie showing up, with his.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I know Randy Quaid, by the way, so.
My husband was Uncle Eddie for Christmas last year.
Was that right?
At our friend's house. Yes, he was. I'll just send you the picture. Climate change is preventing the children's education. Oh, the humanity. Yeah, they basically get Halloween off in our town, which is fine. I think it's cute. So, okay, so we'll lighten it up later. We could talk a little bit more about Halloween if you want to. I have some other things to talk about. What I really wanted your expertise, I want your brain. Mm-hmm. Because when we work together, you have such insight because of what you've done, because of your background, especially into foreign affairs and the military. And I am fascinated by the IDF. Israeli Defense Forces. I'm fascinated by them. So one of the first questions I have for you, my husband and I were discussing this, people from all over the world who are Israeli, came from America, living in America, went back to Israel to volunteer with the IDF. Now they have to spend, well, how many years do they have to spend even if you're a dual citizen, do you have to give in service to Israel? That's the first question.
I think it's not a lot compared to what an enlistment in the United States would be. I think it's like a full year, maybe 2 years. But the big thing about it, Mary, it's not just that they had to serve the time, is that they become essentially a permanent resource that can be recalled. And that's why you're seeing everybody being recalled from the Jersey Shores to New York and all these other places. These dual citizens are being recalled. So it's more about getting people trained, understanding the military as how it works, what their role would be, having a skill of some sort that's retainable. That's tough to do. I mean, if you don't use it every day or periodically, but the idea is you go through, you become trained in the basic warfighting skills that are necessary to be on the battlefield, and then you're released. It's a very short enlistment compared to most other militaries. As far as I know, it's conscription for both men and women. Women have to serve too. Yeah. I had a high school friend, Ruth Broder, who did have to serve in the military. I mean, she knew she was going to go off and do it, and she did it. And it's just a requirement. All citizens have to essentially be able, much like our Second Amendment. Our Second Amendment says, the militia. We're the militia, by the way. I mean, I get tired of the left talking about how, an organized. No, we are the militia. We're supposed to be able to self-organize. And much of what the Israelis do is based on that idea that they're a small nation, very small, and therefore they have to maximize the number of citizens that are available for military conscription and recall. And that's why you see right now 300,000 troops. That's no small number being called back into active service. And just that number itself, the logistics, is mind-boggling based on what I've seen. So while conscription is short, they are available for further service when they're needed.
So now when you go back, if you get called back, because I know one or two people who weren't called but went back anyway.
Right.
How logistically, how does that work? These people need uniforms, they need weapons, they need ammo. I would assume they need some kind of retraining. I guess yes. Israel just has that program in place because Israel's not big. So they already have that already in place in case it's needed.
So they do. And that's why you've seen a delay. I guess the military term, flash to bang time. It's taking some time to organize around the units they want to use for the incursion into the Gaza Strip. And yeah, your point is well taken. 300,000 people is a lot. And even for the United States Army to do that. I mean, our standing military is like 400,000. It's not super large right now. And to bring up 300,000 people to augment even us would be a difficult thing. When you reactivate somebody, to your point, people probably put on weight. So that means their uniforms don't fit anymore. They're not in great physical shape. So you have to get them back into some form of military bearing and ability to function on the battlefield. I mean, running around 20 pounds overweight on the battlefield is tough to do. I've seen people try to do it. It's tough. And then the basic refreshers that need to be done to I've been saying, get your mind right, because military service is not civilian service. And within the service, you are told to do things, many of the things you don't like, but you're expected to perform those functions and duties based on the direction given by your the individuals appointed above you. So all those things have to be remeshed, resynchronized, refitted in some cases, uniforms, and it takes time. I mean, the fact that they're as far along as they are is pretty impressive. That is the IDF and where they're at. But it does say, it is another reason why you've not seen massive movement of troops into Gaza, because they just don't have them ready to go yet. And I think that's why you see this incremental thing, Mary, where they've been doing what I call reconnaissance by force, where they're going in, doing some rescue missions, trying to map things, trip booby traps, understand the lay of the land, and then come back out. And you're going to see that expand more and more, both as they get more aggressive and more troops are made available to go back on the battlefield. So it's going to take some time to get 300,000 people back in shape to go and fight. So
now, do you know what happens if someone says, hell no, I'm not going back. I'm enjoying my life right here.
It depends. There's a number of factors that would play on that. First off, as always, lawyers, contract. What does your contract say? Did you subscribe for a time that you are mandatory to call up? Like, we have something called the Ready Reserve. And if you're in the Ready Reserve, you can be called up as an individual until you retire or are mustered out. they probably have something very similar where individuals are called back. You have units, reserve units, which are available, and those are activated as a unit. They go through together the process of coming back. And those are the easiest to come back because they're normally getting together on a periodic basis. We do it every weekend, at once, 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks in the summer. So that's the
Right.
reserve forces and National Guard have that. So they have similar programs, not the same, but similar, where they have units which are essentially off the shelf, pretty much ready to go with little training. And those units were the first ones already up on the front, ready to go in. Those are the ones who, Mary, as you saw all the armor lining up, those were the units which were already kind of ready to go and just had to dust off and go do it. But the question becomes one of legality. And if you don't have a contract and you want to volunteer, you just go back. But if you don't want to come back and you are legally obligated to come back, then there'll be something along the lines of UCMJ, Uniform Code of Military Justice is what we call it. I don't know what they call it, but it would be some sort of either a administrative or punitive action against you. Administrative would be, you're a knucklehead, we're just going to kick you out, and you don't get a good discharge. Other than honorable, is what they call it in our service. And then you lose your benefits. You basically don't get any benefits of having been in the military, and you're kicked out. Punitive is where they come looking for you. It's like desertion. And I don't know if they would categorize those not willing to come and show up, if they're ordered to, as deserters, but I think we would. And if you desert, then you become a criminal, and that's a criminal offense that can be punished by jail time and some other things, very severe things. So it really depends on the contract, and it depends on how much they want to make an example of someone, of what happens to them.
So I find it so interesting that Israel was taken by surprise with this. Like the Mossad, their intelligence services are renowned worldwide, and none of the countries that are friendly with them, none of their allies picked up anything on this, which I find really, really hard to believe. That's the first thing. But now you see that they just rescued a soldier who was being held hostage, but they have the intel to find out where these people are, but they didn't have the intel to know that this was going to happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah, let me explain what my understanding is of the failure. And I understand it, but I don't accept it because I've seen similar failures on our side. Basically, let's take the paraglider thing. So the belief was by the IDF and by Mossad that the Israelis so effective in taking down any aerial target, they didn't worry about it. It's like, yeah, the Hamas had tried that before, flying over the wall with paragliders. They just shot them down. So there were lessons that Hamas learned from that they incorporated into the 7 October attack. One of the key ones is blind the Israeli surveillance systems. That is to say, take out all the different things that they watch. Basically, take out the surveillance cameras, take out anything that would be able to detect these low-flying gliders. And they defeated those things. So essentially, the Israelis on that day were blind. They actually, the Palestinians, the Hamas went about blinding the cameras and other things, what we call persistent surveillance. It was they basically took them all out. So there was a blind spot, and then, Mary, there was a delay in like reporting. It's like, hey, all these things went dark. What's going on? And nobody was curious. Like, hey, this is really strange. Everything went down at once. Maybe something's going on. And so then they had been training. The Hamas guys had been training in paragliders in front of the IDF and Mossad, and they thought, these guys are knuckleheads. They tried it already. It won't work. So they just ignored it. They just, we're not worried about it. So some of this was complacency. And then you combine that with other things that they were doing regarding intelligence sources. During World War II, there was an operation that we ran, the United States and British ran, called Operation Bodyguard. I got a book that thick on it. And it was a deception campaign that was designed to essentially deceive the Germans, the Nazis, on what date and where we were going to do the D-Day Normandy invasion. And they did things like create Patton's First Army, the Army of East Anglia, which didn't exist. Patton was a decoy, so was the army. And they had a source called Garbo, a human source, a spy that they basically had captured from the Germans and doubled him. They gave him a choice, like, you can work for us or we'll kill you. Yeah, that's quite a choice. And so the British then started feeding information to Garbo, which was convincing, credible, and something the Germans wanted to hear. They reinforced the Germans' belief that Pas-de-Calais was going to be the location. And they had this guy telling us, like, oh, yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about all this stuff in Normandy. Nothing's going to happen over there. That's a deception. So the Germans bought it. And they bought it so deeply that even after 3 days after the Normandy invasion, they still thought the main effort was going to be in Pas-de-Calais, that Normandy was just a throwaway. So the Hamas folks figured this out and did very similar. And I would argue they did it under the tutelage and guidance of the Iranians. The Iranians taught them how to use these double agents. And the Mossad, to your point, is renowned for their human intelligence. Well, they used that against the Mossad folks. They turned a bunch of these guys and had them basically whispering sweet nothings in the ears of Mossad, telling them, don't worry about it. Nobody in Hamas wants war. Everybody is peaceful. They're seeking other things. So that was apparently the line that the government wanted to hear. So it basically reinforced what the government wanted to hear. It essentially set up the Israelis for a belief. This is a danger in an intelligence system. I've seen it happen myself, where the politicians have aspirations, and they really want to focus on intelligence which matches their aspirations. And therefore, the Israeli government wanted to believe that, oh, everything's good with the Palestinians, everything's cool. And it was a fatal flaw. So that's why on the 7th of October, they were caught flat-footed, because they were not diligent. They didn't respond rapidly to failing ISR, intelligence surveillance systems. And they had been essentially fed information that reinforced their beliefs that Hamas was not interested in fighting and nothing would happen. So that's why you saw the failure that you did.
Yeah. Pete says, USMS vet here. My current body type is perfect for a permanent defensive position. He would not be going back if called up. If anybody, by the way, if you guys want to ask questions, if you want to throw them in here, I'll put them up on the screen, and we'll just play, we'll just try to, stump the vet here. We'll probably stump Tony and see if we can.
That's good.
We could get him. So, okay. I was watching these paratroopers come out of the sky. I'm like, why is no one shooting at them? I thought in Israel that everyone was armed, that you're a soldier.
No.
And, it's like Sweden, where they all take their weapons home with them,
No, it's not. So this is where we need to be very clear on this. And I've said this in a number of programs. The gun control system in Israel is what the left wants to do here. They basically want to have an unarmed population that is only armed for purposes of defense, and that everybody is basically left to their own devices without guns. Only 2%, I believe, 2 or 3% of the Israeli civilian population have weapons. Now, the kibbutzes that were attacked, out of the 25 that were attacked, the only one that survived was what the guy that had guns, and they used them, and they were able to fight off pretty easily, because most of those terrorists were knuckleheads. They weren't the best and brightest that Hamas could send. But let's face it, a knucklehead with an AK-47 and you're unarmed, you're going to lose that fight every time.
Yeah, and that was apparently like a 27-year-old woman who was in charge of the defense.
Yeah.
And she said, and she opened up the storage and she called everybody up. She gave them, and there were, like you said, there were like 25 men and women who had weapons. They fought for 5 hours, and they defended the place.
They won.
And they
beat
them. Yeah. They said she's going to get like the highest medal in
well
Israel
deserved.
Because she's also fresh out of the Corps, probably too. So she's a great soldier.
But the liberal mindset that we face here is inculcated there. Oh, we don't need guns. Guns are only for purposes of defense of a big war. And basically we saw, especially in that concert, I feel terrible about those concert goers. I think they had 2 guys with billy clubs, and that's it. I mean, it's like, why? Well, everybody's peaceful here. We don't need guns. And when I was in the war zone, Mary, I had a gun on me all the time. As a matter of fact, I've got guns around me right now. I mean, literally, I have guns literally ready to go. I mean, I'm not joking. No, I'm serious, because
no, I know
it's guns aren't the issue. Guns in the hands of law-abiding citizens is your best defense, literally. And the lesson that was presented to us by the Israeli failures need to be something everybody recognizes. If you are unarmed, it doesn't matter what your intentions are. Your intentions are going to lose, because that guy's got a gun and you don't. And those concert goers were literally, I mean, I looked at the map today of all where everybody fell. I mean, they've done immense forensics on this, Mary. It's on. I read it on the Daily Mail. They have maps that literally show where everybody fell. I mean, literally, little red dots all over the place. It was. They were just walking around shooting people, literally.
Yep, I
And
know.
so I can't believe we would consider going down that path simply by the fact that the United States is while we have two oceans which separate us from a lot of the problems, we're not immune from it. And southwest border, heck, the border with Canada, you have all sorts of
Open,
potential.
wide open,
they're both open. So
wide open.
we're not in a position to ignore the need for individuals to be armed and prepared to defend themselves. So.
Yeah. Porch View Farm says these 500 Americans that were taken, are these mostly dual citizens? How do we know some are not part of these burned bodies? First of all, we don't know how many Americans were taken because didn't we just see, I think it was Blinken who said, oh, we don't know how many. Like, we have no idea. So I heard that was the initial number, but they've backed off on that number considerably, right? I think they're down to like double digits at most, right? With a number of Americans taken.
So the number I've been given by sources I trust is about 32.
Okay.
And
that's precise.
Well, because they're lying, Mary, they're lying. They know exactly how many folks are there now. They know. They just don't want to admit that there's 32 people they're trying to negotiate for. And so of those folks, I understand most of them are dual citizens. They're not all, but most of them are dual citizens. And there is a process of negotiation and special operations being considered to get to retrieve them. What I find appalling, and I think the Israelis do too, is that the Biden administration is off on its own negotiating directly with Hamas via Qatar. And I don't trust Tony Blinken. Tony Blinken got his lunch eaten about 2 weeks ago when he went over and visited with President al-Sisi in Egypt and King of Jordan. Yeah. So it's just atrocious. And I think the administration is kind of not on board with the Israelis. They are doing their own thing. I would argue that of course, I think that the Biden, if left to their own devices, would actually be cheering. As a matter of fact, I saw an interview with one of the Hamas leaders saying, we're surprised at the United States reaction. Well, they're surprised because there's been a strong reaction because the Biden administration doesn't get the final vote, despite the fact I think they'd want to. If it was left to Joe Biden and Tony Blinken, they would force the Israelis into a ceasefire. No doubt in my military mind.
I mean, we know that, Barack Obama has a huge hand in this administration, and we know how Barack Obama treated the Israelis during his administration. So that's not a surprise. And listen, the world knows kidnap an American and the U.S. will give you $6 billion. That's the price for an American hostage. I did the math quickly on my phone, $192 billion for 32 hostages.
Yeah.
Right. So why wouldn't you take them and hang on to? They're like, oh, you're American, you're worth $6 billion.
And this didn't happen under Trump, and it wouldn't happen under Trump. In fact, I was working with them to try to defund what we were given to the Palestinian Authority. Much of that was going to those terrorist organizations now that are troubling the Israelis. I've never understood, Mary, the idea of helping the Israelis with military equipment and then funding the very enemy who the Israelis have to use it against.
Well, we're idiots. We are absolute idiots. Listen, I wouldn't know Mike Johnson, the new Speaker of the House, if I fell over him. I was like, when I heard that he's the guy who won, I was like, well, I went to school with a guy named Mike Johnson. Is that him? Like, I had no clue who Mike Johnson was. But I love that he's putting up a bill for just funding for Israel, and he's making people vote on it. So here you go, because it brings out the anti-Semitism on the Democrat side. And I think that there is a huge come to Jesus moment here, and that may be a bad analogy when talking about the Jewish population, but I don't know what else to call it. But they're having that moment where you're seeing video after video of these people who are like, wow, I had no idea the Democrats were anti-Semites. And I'm thinking to myself, have you seen Rashida Tlaib? I mean, do you not know who Ilhan Omar is?
Yeah.
And they've been getting away with it over and over and over again, and it's been ignored, and you keep voting for them. Yeah. I have many friends who are Jewish, but the thing here is American Jews, for the most part, will tell you that Israel doesn't matter to them because they're reformed. They have no attachment to Israel. They never served, in the IDF. They don't. And I have others who are very attached, who are dual citizens, and who did actually go back or are now considering going back. They're thinking about have young children. So I know both camps, and the ones who are loyal to Israel, that crew, are more conservative leaning.
Yeah.
And the ones who are like, Israel doesn't matter to me, are all in for socialism and getting rid of guns, and they're all Democrat. And I'm like, do you see who you're voting for? Yeah. So now these videos are showing up on Twitter with people saying, I had no idea that this is the Democrat Party. I had no idea. So I think that there's an awakening happening. Yeah, where have you been? But for a lot of American Jews, this doesn't matter to them. They're the ones out there screaming about, free Palestine, because to them, Israel doesn't mean anything. So I don't get it, because if you think, and maybe I'm wrong and I can ask you this, but for the number of Palestinians in this country who are screaming and yelling, which, by the way, if you're a foreign, here, and you're screaming for a terrorist group, a designated terrorist group, that's a reason to be deported. But we don't deport anybody. You can break whatever laws you want. We're not going to deport you.
I think we have to put it in context.
Let me ask you one quick question. So my feeling is if you think this stops with the Jews, you're out of your mind, because they also want to eradicate Christians too. They want all Muslim. They want an all Muslim world.
Well, let me put it in context. And by the way, just out of curiosity, let me ask you a question. Was that guy you were going, the Johnson guy, was his name Big Johnson by chance?
Not that I know.
Just joking. Anyway, so we need to put this in historic context to your question. So first off, I've been trying to get kids to go watch Lawrence of Arabia. Go watch Lawrence of Arabia. It's a great movie, but it gives context to how we got here. Basically, the agreement made by the British and the French to carve up the Middle East after World War I in 1917, the Sykes-Picot Agreement, created the separations, the geographic separations, the borders we see today. So that helped it. And of course, it all started because the British promised what is now Palestine and Israel to both the Arabs and the Jews. So you kind of set this off literally 100 years ago. This has been a 100-year effort. But before that, I keep hearing all this about liberating, the area from the Israelis. Like the Israelis were there before Islam even existed.
Yep.
Let's just Jerusalem. It's in the freaking name, Jerusalem. I mean, how do you miss this? How do you not get this? And so, but to your point, they've changed their narrative. Oh, it's not about getting them out now. It's about the fact that they killed the Messiah. They're going back to killing. Oh, they killed Jesus. They did all these other bad things. So we got to kill them. They've literally now added that to their repertoire, to their justification. And to that point, though, Mary, it's not just about that. It's about the fact that once they get done with the Jews, and I've said Hamas equals Nazis. Just, anytime you hear Hamas, think Nazis, because it's the same thing. Could you imagine in 1944, Mary, that when General Patton rolled up on one of the concentration camps, took all those pictures, General Eisenhower shows up, takes the pictures, sends them back, talks about these Nazi atrocities, that we had people in Times Square protesting for the Nazis, saying, oh, they should have done a better job of killing the Jews. Think about that.
I know.
That's what they're doing. That's what Hamas is doing. That's what the Palestinians are doing in the United States. They are trying to support the same concepts of brutal removal, genocide of a race, as did the Nazis. There's no difference. There's no difference. And I knew
my grandfather's brother wound up in a concentration camp because he's Catholic.
Yeah, that's my point. So then once you get done with
Jewish.
So no, and that's what they said. And this is where I keep reminding my Islamic friends, they're going to come for you next because you're not the right Islamist. Yep. This is political, and this is political Islam. It's not about religion. They've taken a religion and used it for purposes of militarization of Marxism. It's a Marxist concept that has been retooled and uses a religious veil to promote its very severe concepts of controlling a civilization. It's all about control, about making people think a certain way, act a certain way, and has no relevance. And it's an anathema to everything we believe regarding our republic and individual freedom.
My favorite is like Queers for Palestine.
Yeah.
Do you know nothing? Do you tell me how to tell me you know absolutely nothing without telling me you know that? It's like, and I keep saying like Queers for Palestine, chickens for KFC.
Yeah. It's like, Yammer is, I don't get it. I mean, how do you guys not understand that you'd be the first ones they literally take out and behead? And they would do it in a very public way because they're going to make an example of you.
Yeah,
I don't get it.
absolutely.
I don't get
I
it.
don't understand it either. Let's see. Gregory says Kirby told Rosen that there were fewer than 10. Yeah, that's what I saw when James Rosen asked him, less than 10.
Yeah, I know both guys, and Kirby's a knucklehead. Kirby's lying. Kirby knows he's lying. I'm just putting it out there. John is, look, he spends a lot of time picking out those snappy suits and ties in Georgetown, and God bless John Kirby for having an amazing fashion sense. But everything else that comes out of his mouth is a lie. It is. It just,
To me, he looks like he's very uncomfortable at all times when he's answering this kind of like, oh, come on, guy. Yeah, because he's a terrible, horrible liar. Senator Blackburn was questioning Sullivan. I didn't see that.
So Jake Sullivan, just while we're on Jake Sullivan, you ever remember the TV series, The Muppets, Mary, in the old days?
Oh, yeah.
He's like Beaker from the Muppets, He is. Yeah, that's him. It is. It is. I mean,
yeah, his name's come up with something recently with Biden and the China stuff too,
yeah.
or with Trump with the Russia collusion thing. His name's come up with that, not surprisingly.
Yeah.
Let's see. Chris Christie says, how the heck did Jack Lew become the ambassador to Israel? What is Biden thinking?
So Jack Lew is a partisan. He is close to Obama. He is very much in the circles of progressive thinking, far left progressive thinking, not the. I always try to distinguish now because I have dear friends who are still traditional or liberals. I went to college and was taught to think by liberals who recognize the importance of free speech and of being challenged, of making people think. Those liberals are not the progressives. They're a completely different.
No, they're Republicans now.
Most of them, I think, are. And the very people who we always made fun of because they always wore Birkenstocks are now on our side, just saying. So,
yeah.
So, but no, Jack Lew he was picked because he's going to be the guy who can basically undermine common sense policy that I think we would all agree on for purposes of trying to promote and keep the promotion of Iran front and center to allowing the Iranians to gain more influence. I think that's why he's going there. So.
That's to me, it's just crazy. Let's see. Porchview Farm. My grandparents ministered to the official refugees housed at Fort Erie and Oswego. I'm editing their papers. Oh, that's got to be interesting.
Yeah.
And very interesting. So let me ask you. So we find out today that Egypt says apparently Israel wanted Egypt to take about to transfer people to the Gaza Strip's people.
Right. They wanted to take them in.
They want to send them to the Sinai Peninsula.
That's right.
Right. And
That's
Egypt's like, we're not taking one.
No.
Why will none of these Muslim countries take any Palestinians? What is up with that? I don't understand it. Like, there's something going on when all your neighbors are like, yeah, no, no, thanks. Not coming to the barbecue.
Well, there's two reasons. First, they're not convinced they're going back. That's first off. It's like they're not convinced once they're gone, they're going to go there because they're saying, no, we don't want them. Secondly, because would you want Hamas living in your backyard, Mary? Would you put a pup tent up in your backyard and say, hey, I know you're terrorists, but hang out in the backyard and, the creek's over there so you can go take a bath and all that? No. And so Al-Sisi is by the way, Al-Sisi, Field Marshal Al-Sisi, General Al-Sisi, is a graduate of the U.S. Army War College, and I know some of his professors. He's a very smart guy. He does not suffer fools easily, and the whole thing was stupid. And same with Jordan. Jordan's not going to take these folks into Saudi Arabia because they know it's like, we don't want your problem. It's a problem that we don't want anything to do with.
So let me ask you a question. I was watching the hearings today with Christopher Wray. What a liar. And he was talking about, heightened, our U.S. has a higher level. We should be on the alert for attacks and everything else on our soil because we're letting these people walk into this country, 8 million of them that we know of for the last 3 years. The population of like 4 Wyomings has marched into this country.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand. What does the administration, what do Democrats get if there is an attack on our soil by people that they let walk across the border?
Well, nothing. They've never been held accountable before, Mary. They'll explain it away. Remember under Obama, there was essentially an ISIS lone wolf attack every week. Right? Remember, I mean, we were having recruiting stations hit. We had all these things. There in New York, there was a thing with a guy there.
That's right, in Times
near
Square.
my publisher. Yeah, down at the Flatiron building. So all these lone wolves, they weren't lone wolves. They were all being coordinated, and the administration was looking the other way. That's why it happened.
So, but let me ask you, like, I get that lone wolf thing, but there's going to be something big that is going to happen, right? That's there's going to be something big. That's what they're talking about. That's what Christopher Wray was talking about today. I don't understand where Democrats go, yeah, if it happens, it happens. So what? Like, I don't understand.
Because the security state gets more authority because they benefit. Look what happened in 9/11. We still have stuff in place in 9/11 that we don't need. No, think about it.
Yeah.
The very mechanisms that were used against President Trump regarding all the controls of social media, all these things. There's several things in the Patriot Act which allows the FBI to do all this, basically letters of whatever. This gives the administrative state, aka the deep state, sufficient authority to promote what they want to do, and their interests are locked in with the Democrat Party. They're linked. They walk together. They aren't the same thing. And don't be, Tony Shaffer said the Democrat Party is, no. The deep state, the administrative state, has the mirrored interest of the Democrat Party. The administrative state does not want oversight. Democrats don't want oversight. The administrative state wants to be able to do things how it wants based on its interest and power. Democrats, same thing. So their interests align very closely. And that's why you have a lot of these folks like Chris Wray and others who are pretty much subsidiaries, because they won't look at Joe Biden, but they're all over Trump. They won't look at Hamas and the operatives here. And God forbid something happens. It's like, oh, geez, we should have caught that. We need more authority. Give us more money and more authority. We'll make sure it doesn't happen again. So they win no matter what. That's why they're not worried about it. They're all for, because they understand how to take a crisis and mold it into the shape they need it for their political gain. That's why.
Right. Never let a good crisis go to waste.
That's right. And our side lets them do it. Our side lets them do it.
True. So, so let's play this out. Let's take this to the end, right? So you wind up with a huge population. We have a huge Muslim population in this country that was started under Barack Obama. And I don't have a problem with peaceful Muslims. That doesn't bother me at all. I don't care. As long as you're a good neighbor, it doesn't bother me. I have a problem with the non-peaceful ones, the ones that are in the streets attacking Jews right now in this country. They went after a Christian guy because he was sticking up for the Jewish guy, right? So they went after them. They have no problem with that. I have a problem with, there was an imam in Maryland who's on a tape saying, we're coming, we want no Christians or Jews, right?
Right.
Who are saying that. And there's a lot of people who feel that way. What happens when they rise up and they try to seize power? Does the authoritative state honestly think that they're going to be able to fight them off, that they're not going to come for them too, or do they eat them last?
They don't think it's a realistic possibility. They ignore it. This goes back to what we talked about regarding the Israelis being completely unprepared for 7 October. They just presume that they're smarter than everybody else, that their policies are going to work no matter what the ground truth is. My friend Catherine Herridge talks about it. They use happy talk and concepts rather than ground truth and facts as the way they do business. It is what it is. That's the way they see the world. And
which is why they hate Trump.
Look, that's why that's why you have these catastrophic failures, and these people end up as like Mussolini, kind of shoved out and taken away with his mistress. They miscalculate. They ultimately always miscalculate their hubris. They're very narcissistic people. I could go through a whole rift on this, but I'm just saying that for the purposes of our debate and what you're talking about, they don't care. They think that they're smarter than everybody else and that their policies are going to be just fine, and they never see themselves as part of the equation if something fails. They just never do.
Porchview Farm says Egypt hates the Palestinians. They killed Sadat. So there you go. All right. So
one of the reasons.
Let's move out of that area. And I want to talk about China and Taiwan. We don't have a lot of time left here. We're not going to get to the happy, fun stuff, but you were such a font of information. So I hope the viewers don't mind. We're not going to do something. I try to do something a little bit later if we do politics in the beginning. But I want to talk because this to me is fascinating. I think a lot of people are not paying attention. But while all this is going on over here, like in the Middle East, you've got China and Taiwan rearing its ugly head now too.
Right.
And so what you see here is China, Russia, Iran, and you've got all the terrorist groups, Hezbollah, Hamas, etc., all coalescing now. They've been doing it for a long time. Now they're starting to show their head. Like the monster's coming out of the shell, pecking its way out, and we're starting to see the whole monster. And you're seeing China now with Taiwan. If that becomes a thing, and I believe we sent some ships to Taiwan towards the strait, did we not?
We did.
That area?
A while
We
back,
did.
yeah.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago.
So do we even have the capability anymore? Because to me, our military is so weak compared to what it used to be. It is not the power that it was right after World War II. Can we even handle having, ships over in the Middle East and our soldiers getting fired on all the time, which I don't understand why we allow that. And then having ships over, by Taiwan and China with that going on there. I think we're in over our heads. I don't think we can handle it. Am I wrong?
Theoretically, we have 10 carrier battle groups. 2 are deployed in the Pacific, 2 are deployed in the Mediterranean right now. Theoretically, you have 6 others. You really don't. You have maybe 2.5, 3, because there's various states of repair. Like I live within an hour of Norfolk, Virginia. You drive up there, Mary, you see that there's 2 aircraft carriers that are being refit with nuclear reactors. So there's 2 that are down. So you don't have the combat power that you like to have. Regarding China and Taiwan, the Taiwan Strait is an issue, but my belief is the Chinese, the CCP, PRC, are going to do as bloodlessly as possible any takeover of Taiwan, because their primary objective is to maintain the economic resource that is Taiwan. Taiwan is the foundry of the planet for most microchips, and even for the Chinese. So I think that they do not seek prolonged military action. And we would not probably be able to respond in time to actually participate in any major military action because they're far away. And carriers do not carry a lot of troops. You're not going to be able to do a major engagement. The Marine Corps is trying to reconfigure itself to be prepared for a fight in the Pacific. It's going to take them years to do that. And there's a lot of debate going on internally. That's a whole separate show. And then the Army is focused on other things right now as well. So CINCPAC, this is the command in the Pacific, commander, the Pacific Command, does know what's going on. They have been very vocal about this. Even their commander has said that war with China is inevitable. But it seems to me that our focus is bifurcated, because right now we spent most of our weapons that we would need in the Pacific, we've given them to the Ukrainians. Matter of fact, One of the reasons with the delay of the offensive into Gaza is because we gave the artillery rounds that were available for the Israelis to use. We gave that to Ukraine back in January of this year. So we are depleted. And as General Omar Bradley once said during World War II, amateurs talk strategy, professionals talk logistics. And that's true. And we just don't have the logistics available to us to actually be effective in a fight in the Pacific right now.
Well, we do have Joe Biden as our commander in chief, so I don't know about you, but I feel totally safe. There's a story here on Fox News that apparently the director of the New York office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights out of the UN High Commission, sent a letter to Volker Turk of Austria, who was the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, and he resigned. And in his letter, he wrote on what he called essential points regarding the war between Israel and Hamas. And in it, he details what he believes a, quote, UN normed-based position would look like. He called for a one-state solution, which would mean the end of the Jewish state. He said in his letter, this is the UN, we must support the establishment of a single democratic secular state in all of historic Palestine with equal rights for Christians, Muslims, and Jews, and therefore the dismantling of the deeply racist settler colonial project and an end to apartheid across the land. Which, the thing about this that it kills me is that that's not true. There's a great Prager University video of a Muslim who was raised this way. He was from India. His parents Pakistan, came to the United States, was raised, to hate the Jews because they don't give Muslims rights. So he went to Israel and he checked it out, and he couldn't believe it that Muslims and Christians and Jews were all living with equal rights, and they were living in peace next to each other, and everything he had been taught he felt was a lie.
Right. And by the
So
way,
how
gay Muslims too, by the way, I just add, I mean,
Yes, right. They're allowed to exist in Israel.
right.
So if they can't live next door to each other without fighting, and remember, Palestine, the Palestinians at one point in time were offered, like, hey, let's coexist, two state, we'll live in peace, and they said
Oslo
no,
too,
we want
right,
none of it. We want
right,
none of it, right?
right.
So how can the UN, how can a guy that high up lie like this in this letter saying that we just have to get rid of Israel and just redo the whole thing? Because we redo the whole thing and it's going to be all Muslim, and Christians and Jews are going to be thrown out. And we all know it.
2 words: George Soros.
Uh,
George
man,
Soros. George Soros has been very much behind the scenes. He funds a lot of things, and the UN has become essentially inculcated with his concepts. So the idea here, and by the way, George Soros's dad was a Nazi, as I recall. So I think it all fits if you look at the pieces. But the idea of destroying a functioning, very egalitarian, I always have a problem with that word,
yeah.
egalitarian democracy like the Israelis, and to replace it with essentially a state that would be a Marxist paradise, if you will, because we want to put all these people together, much like Tito did in Yugoslavia. Yeah, it worked for Yugoslavia, but he was a strong man. He actually kept it all together. He kept all
He
the diversity.
did.
So yeah, there's lessons in history, but as soon as Tito's gone, it all fell apart.
Yep.
Same with Libya. Muammar Gaddafi did the same thing. Put all these diverse groups together, kept an iron fist on him. The moment he's gone, there it goes. So that's what the UN wants to do. It's like, we'll put them all together and we'll keep control. No, they're out to destroy the Jewish state and in turn the Jewish people. They know what would happen. The Jews would be eradicated. They know that.
I don't.
So
Can I ask a dumb question? Why? Why do they hate the Jews so much? I don't get it.
I
I
don't get
don't
it.
understand it at all.
From a kid, I've never gotten this. I went to high school in Lisbon, Portugal, and I mentioned Root Broder earlier. Root was Israeli. What did I care? What do I care? We were just kids. We all got along. I had Japanese friends. It was the international school. I had Japanese friends. I had Angolan friends when they were communist. I had Nigerian friends. We all just got along, and I could never understand. And by the way, nobody cared if you were Jewish or Muslim in our high school. I never understood, and I still to this day understand why there's such hate. I mean, even within the teaching of Islam, and this goes back to this one interview I saw. This one imam was saying the Prophet Muhammad killed 10 Jews in a 72-hour period, as if like that's something to be proud of. Like, and what does that mean? Why did he do it? Well, he hated the Jews. Why? Nobody. There seems to be no clear. Well, they offend God. They've killed this. Like, first off, you weren't there. You don't know. No, whatever happened back then, it's all mystical. I'm not saying there's not some level of record, but why now would you bring the past into the present for purposes of murder?
And can I just say, what dog do Muslims have in the who killed Jesus fight?
Well, I'm
kind of thinking that's just the Christians and the Jews, and we've pretty much worked that out.
Well, we've worked it out, but I'm saying they believe that they actually have Jesus and there's a couple of apostles that are important to the Islamic faith because
Mary, Mary's in there too.
Because Muhammad told them. And by the way, do you know who wrote the Quran?
I don't know.
Jewish folks. 2 Jewish scholars were captured by Muhammad and forced to write the Quran.
Wow.
Little history there for you. I'm just saying it doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense.
I just don't understand. Growing up in New Jersey, you were Catholic, Jewish, or Protestant of some form of Protestantism. No Baptists. We didn't have a lot of Muslims at the time.
Well, everybody hates Baptists.
Well, we're too far north for Baptists. We just don't have them, right? So I mean, I can understand Yiddish just because I'm so close to New York, right? Like I understand.
Yeah.
We use a lot of Yiddish terms. I didn't even know they were Yiddish when I was a kid. We would go caroling when I was a kid in my neighborhood. We all go caroling. And of course, I didn't invite the Jewish kid down the street because I'm like, he's Jewish. His mother called my mother and wanted to know why he wasn't invited to the caroling party. My mother's like, well, because you're Jewish. We didn't think you'd want to do that. She was like, no, he wants to go. And he sat there and sang Christmas songs with us and had a great time. Like,
well, that's So this is where
I don't understand the hatred of the Jews. I don't get it.
Most civilized people think like we do. It's like, hey, Yeah, I always, by the way, I offend my. Are you Catholic?
Yeah.
So I offend my Catholic friends by telling people that
Villanova.
I'm a Druid. I have friends of mine who are Catholic who are all upset. It's like, well, that's not true. It's like, but I make people think. It's like, would you not accept me if I was a Druid? You know, I mean, look, there's something to be said about naked girls doing sky-clad ceremonies around fires. That seems like a good thing in my religion. So, by
But
the
that
way, you do
doesn't
know that,
offend me
right?
as a Catholic. I have news for you. That doesn't offend me as a Catholic because
Well, I
I'm
have a
kind of
friend
like,
of mine that's
okay,
very
you do
offended by
you.
every time I bring it up, she gets really upset. But anyway,
You know
my
what? Who
point
cares?
being, I say it for purposes of getting people to think. Would you somehow want to take me out and burn me at the stake because I like watching naked girls dance around fires, which offends your faith? I mean, seriously. So,
Yeah, we have before years ago, before we started construction on the house, we had a very good friend, Marty, and Marty loves Christmas, and he worked at Marsh McLellan on the top floors of the World Trade Center, and he would always decorate. His floor was decorated as soon as they came back from Thanksgiving. He decorated with Christmas. He loved Christmas. The people who lived next door to us when I was a kid growing up, the Levines, the father, Mr. Levine, had my father come over and said to him, "You have to show me how to hang Christmas lights because all the
that's
houses have
cool.
it. We don't, and the kids want them." So they
Yeah.
had Christmas lights. So Marty loved Christmas, and his wife, he wanted a Christmas tree in the house. His wife wouldn't let him have one. So we let Marty come and decorate our Christmas tree. And in a couple of years, his wife softened and she came too. And they brought Mandelbrot. So we had Mandelbrot, and they wanted, and Marty's like, "I want
Yeah.
Christmas carols. I want the whole thing." And then it started to grow. And then more and more Jews kept coming to our house to decorate the Christmas tree. One year we had to have 2 trees because we had so many Jews decorating our
That's
Christmas,
great.
and they wanted the Christmas carols, and they would bring like potato latkes, and we'd have like antipas, we'd have like Jewish food, we'd have Italian food, we'd have the Christmas carols going. Their kids, they sat them in front of the TV with all the Christmas specials with Rudolph and the whole bit. We had a great time. So when people are like, "Yeah, but they hate the Jews, I'm going to come get you because you're just like," I just can't wrap my brain around any of it.
I look,
I just don't get it.
you're talking about 10th century mentality in the 21st century. That's what it is. You have people who believe, you know, they would take us back to the Stone Age, to the Flintstones if they could. And I mean that sincerely. Hamas has no interest in
Oh yeah.
civilization. They have no interest in progress. They have no interest in prosperity, freedom, or the idea that we can all live free and find our own path to our faith. So they
But I'm
don't
not.
accept that.
But Tony, you know what? I'm not even talking Hamas. I'm talking about when you see on TV, I mean, excuse me, on Twitter and on all these social media outlets with people, Americans, 40-year-old Americans driving by going, "F the Jews,"
Ah,
screaming and yelling at people.
I don't
What
get
did
it.
they do to you? I don't understand it. They could be your neighbor. You were fine
No,
before October 7th. You were in class with them in school and everything was honky dory. Now all of a sudden you want to kill them?
no,
What?
I don't get it. I've
I don't
never
get it.
gotten it, and I hope
I
I
don't get
never
it.
do, because it's just one
Uh,
of those things that is just I
I don't
I
understand.
don't know. But
And
like you, Mary, I have Islamic friends. I'm very close to the folks in England. I've worked with them. The Association of British Muslims formed in, I think it was 1887. They accept Druids. No, I mean I interact with them. We've done events together when I was there. There are people who love peace and want to seek the idea of coexistence, but you have extreme forms of Islam, you know, political Islam, which has decided it's going to take its religion and use it as a method of inculcating itself in the world, and it's another form of Marxism, is all it is. So
Absolutely. Steve here from Now Text USA says, think about it. Is it really the big, is it really in the big picture steps to anti-Judeo-Christian moral principles and laws? It sounds like a modern Democrat. Yeah, anti-Judeo-Christian. Yeah,
yeah,
they're against all of our morals and principles. That's a
yeah,
great point. It's a really great point. Mike McDonald says hatred of Jews proves they're the chosen people. So there you go.
yeah,
Well, Tony, thank you so much. I don't
yeah.
want to
Thank
keep
you.
you. It's Halloween. I know you want
No,
to
I
get to
gotta
your
go. No,
candy.
I gotta go do Rita Cosby's show next. She's calling me right now, as a matter of fact. So I
Oh,
gotta
tell
get
her I
going.
said hi.
I
I
will.
love Rita. Tell her I
All
said
right.
hi.
Good
Goodbye.
seeing
Thank
everybody.
you.
See you
Take
soon,
care.
Mary. Take care. Thanks for having
Bye.
me. Bye.
Bye. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Appreciate you joining me. Again, please like the channel. Please subscribe on YouTube. And I want to thank Bob is one of our new subscribers. DB is one of our new subscribers. Joe is a new subscriber. Thank you so much for doing that. Don't forget the audio will be available on YouTube, excuse me, on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And of course, you can always on YouTube go to the older podcasts. Please watch them. If you do, please like them. Tell your friends and family. Always appreciate you. Mwah. Love you. And I believe James will be back with us next week.